Resident Evil 4 is a phenomenal masterpiece and one of the few truly perfect games ever made, and since Capcom was on a nice stroll of remaking games for that extra dough, with a delightful remake being Resident Evil 2 and a not so delightful remake being Resident Evil 3, we find ourselves with the Resident Evil 4 remake, and since I've never played the original, I thought that this would be quite a treat. Until I decided I was going to play on the hardest difficulty that the game had to originally offer. I say originally because after you beat Resident Evil 4 Remake for the first time, you unlock professional mode, and I had no idea that that was the case. So for the sake of my sanity and the 83.4 gigabytes of space required to gather all the footage necessary for this video, we're gonna go with hardcore for the difficulty. Dropping in, however, I was feeling pretty confident, even stating that I know what I'm doing. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Listen, I know what I'm getting into, alright? I know what I'm getting into. After being teased for searching someone important, one of the police officers goes to take a leak, and since it appears that this leak took longer than my upload schedule, we go to see what's taking so long. Literally. We make our way through the forest to find ourselves a house, and after closer inspection find a resident within, and being the responsible super cop that I am, I do the obvious. Flip, kick, and ask questions later. After inspecting the equivalent of a 5-star hotel meal, and getting Vietnam flashbacks from Resident Evil 7 by looking at a dark stairwell, I find my boy knocked 12 beers deep, and with my ego temporarily shattered by losing health to one guy, I jump myself off a window. After which I looted, committed homicide, and even felt a little zesty. Flash cream. And ultimately found myself to what felt like doomsday, getting emotionally and physically harassed for what felt like almost forever, until eventually, along with the best, if not the best, one-liner ever.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
After which I make my way to a barn, where I clear out the area and even complete my very first side quest. Hey yo. Locking your aim then. That's 4.
1 hour later.
Son of a... And after face planting a C4 and eliminating all local life on the area, I find the man of the hour, Luis. And also a man I could truly only call Big Daddy. After I get infected, I save Luis's ass and head over to find the man I didn't deserve, but needed. Introducing the Merchant. This beefcake of a man is our saving grace, with enough firepower in his arsenal to make even the US military blush, giving us not only new weapons, recipes, and even consumables, but also a way to save the game outside of automatic checkpoints. I simply want to make myself abundantly clear that every time I saw the Merchant, my pants got wet. This man was the way, a way through the depressing madness, and with another banger of a classic quote,
Ooh, what you buying?
I ready myself to go ahead and commit more homicide over at Dynamite Valley. Why is it named that?
Train go boom.
Yeah. A lot of enemies, and especially with explosives, but after one-shotting this level, like the Chad I am, I proceed over to Big Daddy's house, please don't quote that, where I get jump-scared by a man sitting on a toilet, and after completing a little puzzle, I get the wrecking ball.
I came in like a wrecking ball.
No, not that, that's copyright. I get molested once again, after which I make my exit only to find this adorable little thing that I was just about to leave behind, cause you know, skill issue. I mean, it's not like I've ever been caught in a bear trap before. Ah, Going forward here a bit, towers seem to explode for no f***ing reason. And even dogs have fallen prey for this disease. Don't worry though, they're stupid. And after I inevitably make it to the church, I find some loot and a snake? What's best is not the entrance, but the exit, where I find, you guessed it, the Merchant. Gear up, get denied by the church, and make my way to more certified committed felonies. Don't worry though, because I upgrade my gear again, because not much happens. Play a game within a game, and as I was moving along looking at the vast lake, I find my friend who was originally 12 beers deep, and seemed to have completely lost it since he was actively trying to play a game of English or Spanish with the local Apex Predator. Not only was the renowned Del Lago gay, but my friend had lost more than just the game, his life. Which truly left me with one possible outcome: revenge.
right hand on the Bible. God can strike me down if I'm lying. That motherfucker's cheating!
Waking up from Sadler's bitch-ass face, only to find that not only were these freaks somewhat headshot resistant, but now can also mutate. Like, what the f***? Sneak below the cave system, and now back on the boat. But this time, I got to go to a couple of locations. So let's cover those. First, let's talk about that big-ass boat in the middle of the lake that contains some loot and a little handgun, which I gladly took. Then, we have the Chicken Island, which contains regular eggs, as well as a golden egg. This egg is golden, for more reasons than one. Not only is this thing kinda valuable, but can find a second one, which would allow you to essentially two-shot Salazar. Sounds great, right? So of course I sold the damn thing due to my lack of knowledge at the time, but also due to lack of skill for detecting the second one. There are now 2 more spots remaining, which give me a head each. Or at least that's what I said to myself every night to go to bed. Oh, Resident Evil, yeah. What I meant to say was that I visited these locations, and by using my unmatched detective skills, aka Google, I was able to receive said heads. This is getting out of control. I made my way back at the church, after I received the church insignia, and this all looked very nice and simple. Totally nothing bad is going to happen. Oh shh! It's boss fight time, baby, which gets relatively easily beaten by initially shooting it to reveal its Plaga parasite on the rear of its head, and then following that up with a majestic barrage of knives, which I nail almost never, and even got a little help from the doggo we saved earlier. Turns out, karma is real, and you guessed it, beat the fight. After I aggressively flee the scene that I essentially caused, I do a puzzle, visit the merchant, and find what I guess is the next evolution of the dog equivalent of the parasite, which possessed no threat, and as such, I made it to the church, where I used Google, my unmatched puzzle-solving skills, to find the vein of my existence. Introducing Ashley, the president's daughter, and my entire objective outside of surviving. Why do I say the vein of my existence? Well, that's because Ashley's AI seems to sometimes forget to work, either by running whatever the fuck he wants, or not running at all, and sometimes a mix of those. And even though this is kind of rare, at times it does become excruciatingly annoying, but more of that later. The locals found out I was stealing their yacht and started searching for me and Ashley, but we made it through to the roof and totally didn't die when attempting to sneak behind enemy lines. Went back around to the church and got ambushed by a bunch of ganados, off in which I looted the place, reorganized my inventory, and off I go. 2 more killing. Even though I thought I'd escaped the onslaught of barrage of enemies, I get proven wrong when I get enclosed into probably one of the game's best and most clustered segments, where I found myself with Luis inside of a little cabin, where an alarming amount of enemies breach and I have to protect myself, but after two-shotting the place, I escape and get a cutscene explaining the point forward in terms of the story. Now, if you've already played Resident Evil 4, you already know that this virus doesn't just infect me, but also Ashley, and acts as a driving force to get deeper into the game and see what it has to offer, so that we don't just get out of here now. That and the convenient ass rainstorm that's happening, but I digress, because next up we have an annoying ass encounter with a bunch of different types of ganados, and something I'd always do: steal. Fast forwarding here, I found a set of enemies with a suspiciously large amount of loot, along with an even more suspiciously set of lockers, which ultimately triggered my gamer neuron brain into activating due to my realization that shit was about to go down. And right, I was, because immediately I go to grab something and nearly get split into 2, but due to my undesirable thirst to flex, instead of backing up like a normal person would, I backflip and trigger the next sequence. Now you see, originally I thought I was stuck in this one room with the Bella sisters, and I had to somehow survive. I didn't realize I could just walk out the front door, due to my unhealthy time playing Call of Duty Zombies. In all honesty, I thought I was being sent here to loop around this one table in the room, had not knowing that it's essentially one shot, and since running around in a circle and slowly picking off enemies, or in this case ganados, had already been engraved deep into my brain cells, I started doing just that. Not like it worked anyways, and then realized that there was another way out. Though due to the amount of enemies and playable area, I still treated this like a good classic COD Zombies, and emerged victorious, and just when I thought that I was safe and sound, I ran, because that's what you're supposed to do, and then got set up for another boss fight, which has stages to it, being the closer you get to beating it, the more annoying it gets. Honestly, to this day, I still don't know how to dodge this annoying attack. The first stage is very simple, with mainly 2 attacks, which are very easy to dodge. However, the second ranged phase is a tough nut to crack. Pause. The reason is because these ranged attacks are pretty big and covering a huge part of the playable area, and he throws 2, which means even if you manage to dodge the first one, the second one would definitely get you. And the only viable strat I found was cheese, of course. Now, if you don't already know, Resident Evil 4 has this weird thing where not immediately, but really soon after starting the climb animation, you get iframes. and the rage attacks don't track you during this period, as well as dropping from a high place for whatever reason. So what I did is I climbed up and down continuously until he stopped throwing projectiles, and then beat the scared, injured, and on super low HP, with no healing items, I make my way to the castle and mark the beginning of chapter 7. To not bore you with the details, I make my way to the castle main gate entrance, where I restarted and died way more times than I should. Watched some YouTube regarding the medallion locations, upgraded my gear, and met the next villain of the story, Salazar, and the objective of the bad guys. Short version being this word on screen, because I ain't trying to pick no beef with the YouTube algorithm. But the long story being that they don't like the way the world is, so by making everyone a plague, essentially they can run the world, something like that. Anyways, listen, I'm just here to beat the game on the hardest difficulty, okay? Don't hate me. Back on the video, we get some nice shield dudes, which get disposed by a flash grenade as well as the right ratio of shotgun lead to the face. After which, I make a super long and unnecessary segment of semi-parkour puzzle solving and such, so that I can make it to a no rights dungeon. Why, you ask? Because of this thing. It like drains your HP. Good thing is it can't see me, and it has a weak point on its rear. I reunited with Ashley and did even more puzzles, which I totally didn't look up or anything, and before you know it, I was in an oil room where you get oiled up, because the amount of enemies spawned here is drastically more than we have essentially seen for this entire game, thus far, minus the beginning section. The same doorway that makes it to this room, however, also acts as a safe point for me since the AI pathing does not allow for the Ganados to pass through, so of course, since I was already getting spawn picked, I used this to my advantage and showed my retaliation and brought the right ratio of lead to these lands, which means that eventually I get out by lowering the bridge and making it to the courtyard, where we see the plaga taking effect or officially on Ashley for the first time, when she stabs me and almost gets herself killed, and then she flees the scene. Now, this may have seemed like a bad thing, and from a story perspective, it is. But I do not have to worry about Ashley getting kidnapped, or me blasting her on the face. You know, if the song Life Would Be a Dream wasn't copyright material, I would be playing it while I kill these religious extremists. But I unlock the next area and find Mommy Ada Wong. Once again, since canonically we've already known her from Resident Evil 2, which is a pretty interesting addition to the story, and we will get to that later. But for now, all you need to know is that the puzzle I'm supposed to solve is bugged. Restarted the game and it worked with my flawless YouTube video watching solving capabilities, and get introduced to a new type of enemy, what I like to call them, the bomber. Mainly because they run at high speeds. Yeah, that's all. After a warm welcome at the bridge, we get into a tower which marks the beginning of 1 out of 2 tower segments. For this one, all you need to know about is Big Chungus, which gets introduced and gets temporarily disabled, and we will get back at that in a bit. But back on the gameplay side of things, I'm at a maze and have to pull 3 levers which lower the respective flags to allow me to open the door. The crazy thing to me is, who the heck lives here that does all this? Doing this tedious encounter just for 1 door? All that to get introduced to a puzzle time from the game because I need to solve 3 puzzles so I can solve the 1. What the f***? The first room isn't much of a puzzle, it's more of a trap. I guess the real puzzle is trying to get at Ashley's bitch to open the damn door once you've done with the bad guys. Second one is a very simple YouTube guide puzzle because I ain't wasting no time in this. And the third one is also a trap. Damn, why did I say 3 puzzles if it was only 1? Well, I get captured and hear Ashley say,
I won't run.
And then proceeds to only do just that. I'm going to presume that you've already watched or played Resident Evil 4 Remake, or at the very least know how well made this section is aesthetically, but fairly mediocre from a gameplay and especially from a video creation standpoint, since it allows some nice downtime from the active experience we've had thus far. So the only time I lost was right here.
Stop the cap.
And after saving Leon, Ashley gets captured again, because we didn't see that one coming, did we? But after a quick radio call from Ada, we know that they take Ashley into the throne room and make my way there, after doing some looting. But before we get into that, I just need to give a mention to the flying little section. I cannot tell you just how many times I lost here due to probably overpopulation, as well as them trying to very aggressively touch my face very inappropriately. But eventually figured out that keeping your distance at all times and taking them out one by one did the trick. And on my way to the throne room, I encountered 2 of the blind heads, which slowed down my progress by a substantial amount. I wish I could tell you that a slow and methodical approach worked for me, but it didn't. I tried slow and steady, fast and aggressive, but nothing worked. Eventually I found out that a combination of both was actually the key, and my strategy kinda looked like this. I started off aggressively, creating chaos, which helped out a lot by eliminating a good bunch of the Ganados via friendly fire. The rest would get sniped, shotgunned, and knifed till it was only just me and the big boys. Then we go on a slow picking them apart approach using the knife, and when that wasn't a possibility either due to the placement or durability, the bolt action with its high damage did the trick. On the throne room, they fed Ashley some weird shit and threw me into a hole, and I have to make my way out, which the old trusty shotty did the trick, which brings me to a very well-known section of the game within the Resident Evil 4 community, and the entire Resident Evil family as a whole, the Verdugo. This thing here tanks. I mean, it's really hard to kill, since apparently you have to switch up these valves at the right time to temporarily freeze it, which leaves it open to high amounts of damage. But I never got to kill the damn thing, even after activating all these valves and shooting him with a shotgun, but missed one of them, which could be the issue. Nonetheless, I made my way to the elevator and met the homie Luis, again, right after getting some in-game Vietnam mating calls from a dude. And after getting physically violated by the chainsaw-wielding heads, and nearly get cave crushed by my own explosives, I get the privilege to see Big Chungus once again, though this time, I make sure to never see him again and say my goodbyes in a very hot manner. But what follows up is without a doubt the best part of this entire game, the minecart section. Now this part has two things that go with it. First, we have a little tutorial part where we mostly get the mechanic down, and after a couple of ganados, we get to the actual minecart section, which is a blast, both literally and metaphorically.
Us a 3-2-1 next time, eh, Sancho?
Kill a few bugs, and meet an old colleague of ours as soon as we leave the lift. Bad thing is...
Luis!
Wait, why do I hear boss music?
Just getting started.
Went on a little trip and met Salazar once again on the second tower section, which is the superior one. Here we have just about enough of different enemy types to make it challenging but not ridiculous. But as you climb up, you notice that a big wrecking ball, no, not that thing again, is present, which kind of one-shots you, though good thing is I didn't experience that at all. Can't say the same about these guys though. On my way through the elevator, it became abundantly clear that either the villagers here weighted the equivalent of a kindergarten kid, or Leon is an absolute thick ass, because if any enemies jump up to your platform, it immediately stops until you've eliminated them. Good thing I can do that. And after carefully navigating my way across the incomplete building at the top, find myself to the Salazar boss fight, which isn't really intriguing, but a well-designed one at that. Anyways, once I beat Salazar, it's time to start the well-awaited island section. After getting dropped by mommy milkers, we enter the island, which starts off slowly by introducing us to a new mechanic being the turrets, but by the end of it looks like World War III. So here is a very quick rundown of how things went over at Island. We started off slow, like I said before, silently taking out our enemies as I go, but very quickly turned into chaos. Afterwards, took out some enemies inside this little bunker and then found out RPG dudes exist, while eliminating him and his group of buddies, only to then find another squad 2 minutes later, with some more RPGs, as well as hefty amounts of armor. However, I don't want you to think that this is over, because it's far from it. As soon as I enter the building, I get greeted with a lot of ganados, followed up by a couple of brutes who protect Ashley. But even though I kill these brutes, I now have to get and fully upgrade a keycard which introduces me to regenerators. You know, after going through a whole village worth of people in the Ashley building alone, and let me tell you, These things are the vein of my existence. Not only do these things, as the name would insinuate, regenerate, but also borderline require you to use a thermal scope on a gun to see their weak points. Now, luckily for me, I had the Stinger, which didn't really have any scopes on, so I made do, but I can understand why people would find this annoying, and I also presume that this is the horror point of the game that some of the latest releases have. In any case, I jumped through one too many hoops and puzzles to obtain the fully kitted card, which unlocked Ashley and thus a very interesting point in the game. Once I forcefully explored the underground sewer section, where I eliminated bad guys, did puzzles, and even got into a little trap, which I totally one-shotted. I didn't. I at last emerged to the wrecking ball. You know, honestly, I was going to do another joke when writing this script, but come on, I just had to, it's like the wrecking ball. Though this time, the name is befitting of the circumstances due to the sheer volume of enemies in this encounter. But after wrecking your way through, I gotta stop talking. We go to the lift, where soon after we get an interesting cutscene with our final boss of the game, Sadler. Final. Well, we still have Krauser to deal with, but we will get to that in a second. Thankfully though, in the Sadler cutscene, our levels of plot armor were through the roof, and as such, the carnage continues with homicides, but first, Krauser. Now, I'm going to presume that you already know how this ends, but in case you don't, we start off with some light combat, and then enter this little desert/jungle booby trap section. Afterwards, a long-range duck and move, and then the final part where we eventually kill Krauser in a two-stage part. First the regular Krauser, and then the buffed up Plugger Krauser, which ends nicely with Krauser recognizing us by calling Leon instead of Rookie, which he did this entire time. Here I guess you could say that the game almost ends with a bang, because now we got full-fledged attack helicopters assisting us, though what it feels like an average COD campaign mission, but just that much harder. In any case, the pilot informs us of his name being Mike, which through his character gives him quite the personality. So as Mike and I smash and slaughter through what is supposed to be an impenetrable fortress according to some in-game documents, we see the easily anticipated downfall of Mike, which in this instance gives rise to the final boss of the game, Sadler. We then have a small sneak section from some regenerators, which I didn't sneak through enough apparently. We yet again have to go through some more hordes of enemies. Like, are you even surprised at this point? But now face an interesting point in the story. We get a cutscene where Sadler nearly fully turns us into his little baby bitch. Thankfully, Mommy Milkers comes to our rescue at the perfect time to save us and barely escape. And as we barely make it to the lab and remove the parasite, we get to understand it a lot more via the in-game lore provided to us. However, I'm not going to cover that since there are plenty of vids that do that already. And with that, we have our final boss fight, which is us getting lured into by Sadler after he captured Ada and then transforms in classic RE fashion. Now, while the boss fight is happening in the background, I would like to take only a moment here to talk about something. You see, while I was in the middle of this entire project as a whole, the channel reached its first ever milestone being 100 subscribers, and I just wanted to say thank you. Of course, I'm nowhere near the level of content creator that I want to be, but I strive to make better and more engaging content for you all to watch. In all honesty, it sounds kinda crazy to think that over 100 people have chosen to stick around just a little bit more to see what I got up cooking. And that kind of means a lot, especially considering that YouTube is kind of like a dream job that I and many others had while we were kids, and this 100 plus sub count is proof of growth. So once again, thank you all for the very first channel milestone, and hopefully many more to come. So now, due to the power of editing, the boss fight should have wrapped up, and that means we have to escape with the president's daughter to secure some overtime back at the White House. And we do that via riding a jet ski, followed up by an ending cutscene, and all is good, right? Of course it's not. What made you think that? This entire time I've died over and over, and you think that simply securing a human that acts more like an NPC would bring justice to this? Would it make it all okay? No. I have to come back and show them what despair means when you know that there's no hope left. This time I won't have someone holding me back, and I could at last get my revenge.